Hello and welcome, this is Alchemist X, and this video is about two different things. First, Ophineus, just an overview of him as a unit, how his kit works, etc. He's a unit I've been waiting for a long time, so I definitely wanted to do an overview of him, and I've gotten him enlightened enough that I feel comfortable doing it. It usually, in cases where if a new unit comes out and I get them and I only have like maybe one gate, like gate 2 enlightened, I don't really feel like doing a showcase because it's just a little bit under leveled. Definitely, it's ideally a unit would be maxed out, but sometimes that's hard to do in a very, very timely basis unless you go absolutely hardcore. So it's not really representative. But having like gate 2, gate 5, gate 7, plus max limit break memento with the VCR, etc., that seems like a better representative sample, because I think a large number of people who went for the character would be able to have their character about that level. So we'll go over that stuff, and then at the end of the video I'm going to go over some complaints that I have, because he's definitely not a perfect character, and then I want to talk a bit about some time sensitive stuff that just pertains to this current reset, of which there's a few days left, because if you are on the fence, then there's definitely an argument you could make for going for Tyrfing instead, and there's this very small window of time to be able to get Ophineus with tagatame versus going for the Tyrfing link banner. So I'll talk about that towards the end. So for right now, let's just jump into a showcase of all of Ophineus's different skills and how they work. Okay, so let's take a look at Ophineus's kit in some detail, just showcase what his moves do and how he functions as a unit. So as a ranged unit, he has a minimum range of 3, and then the maximum, as you can see, goes out quite a bit. It's been extended by his gate 2 and his memento being max limit broken, and can also get extended by his reactive. So being able to hit something from literally across the entire map is not an unreasonable thing for him to do, and that is a good thing, because a lot of his moves are going to scale off of distance. Like if we're looking at how much damage it's doing to these guys, not a whole lot, or at least not compared to when we get farther away. We see a pretty noticeable increase in the damage. So that first move is a single line attack, and that's going to do alchemic overload and paralysis. So alchemic overload, always useful. Paralysis a little more situational, but when it works, it's good to have, assuming RNG likes you. RNG usually makes me like to not act from paralysis a lot more often than enemies, but that's okay. I don't rely on it too much anyway, so that's okay. Then we have a line attack. It's a double line, not to be confused with the triple line right below it. This is mostly a CC oriented move, but this one, like a few others, will ignore reactions, which can be nice. You can throw disable support and daze if applicable onto enemies, so definitely good to have some more CC in his kit. Then the triple line attack is going to be largely a debuff, so it's a pretty big like debuff, you know, assuming the enemy doesn't have massive debuff resistance to P attack, M attack, and dexterity. So that can help, especially that can pretty much shut down most missile units, because they're going to usually scale off of either P attack or M attack plus dex. And it's a nice little AoE, even if it is weirdly specific. The nice thing I like about him, though, is because when you're playing in a language you're not super familiar with, then when a character has a bunch of different AoE shapes in their moves, it's hard for them to confuse them for one another. So all you have to do is look at the shape of the AoE, and once you have that associated with what it does, like triple line debuff, double line CC, etc., it makes the character a little bit easier to use than if they all looked exactly the same. So then finally, this, I forget what to call this. It's like the square with the 4 corners AoE. I like this move a lot. It can be used as a reverse veil. It will shut down not only enemies' ability to quicken themselves and do CT down effects, but it'll also lower their ability to cast status effects on enemies. So kind of like a pirate's maelstrom. If you're able to hit the only enemy doing status effects, then you functionally veiled yourself, and you could use this instead of having a veiler on the team. And then the last move in his main skill set is the Dragon Transformation. However, we will save that for last. Then in his basic kit, he has got a map-wide debuff removal, pretty self-explanatory. Good to have, very situational, given that some of his best work is done via soloing, but in cases where you're running teammates, maybe like Lycaris, who's doing a map-wide debuff, or any other support units that might buff his damage, he might end up far away from them, and then he could prevent debuffs from anywhere. Then we get to a map-wide attack on enemies. Now, this is going to reduce their ability to do auto-heal and auto-jewels, so very, very good for enemies that just heal absurd amounts of health every turn. And then finally we get to a pushback attack. This is one of two. The other one is in master abilities. So this one is I'll go ahead and use it. It's gonna knock the enemy back up to 2 squares. So that's good. Whenever a character has a minimum range in their attacks, then being able to push enemies farther back can be really, really useful, especially if they've been like slowed or anything where you don't have to worry about them just immediately moving back afterwards. So yeah, then speaking of master ability, this move right here is going to move any enemies involved towards the center. Also have CT. So overall, pretty good to have. And as you can see, it also... Oh, you know what? Maybe instead of having CT, it actually meant clock down. Sometimes the translators are a little weird with that. But as you can see, they're both in a different place and slower. So that is his basic kit in his human form. And I think it's pretty solid. Like, there are some characters where... like Zephyrus, where just aside from his map-wide drain, I pretty much never use in the human form. It's just all about being the dragon. And there's other ones like Melville, who I could easily use her human form just for a map, especially on auto when I just want buffs, veils, and healing. And she takes care of that. And then Lindrake, who, honestly, Lindrake's human form is so good, it could have been a complete character by itself. I think that Ophineus falls somewhere in the middle between Lindrake and Zephyrus. It's a solid kit on its own, but it's what makes him so good and so noteworthy is going to be completed with his dragon form. So let's go ahead and transform him right now. And of course, being that he's a dragon unit, we'll start with his field effect. So this is the if you're not Ophineus, you're in for a bad time field effect. So it's the most selfish one in the game. It does put some limitation on his team building because your allies will also have reduced damage, but overall it can still be useful in a team depending on what the allies are doing, and it doesn't last forever either. So you could use it to help yourself survive particularly nasty enemies, and then once the field is over, then the other damaging teammates can go back to being good again. So there's definitely ways to use it. But just in a little bit more detail, okay, so it is range +1, all units have single attack power, AoE attack power, all sectional attack power, and all attacks are reduced to 0. HP and jewel recovery effects are disabled. All status anomaly attributes, jewel auto recovery, damage increase effect to non-human races is greatly reduced. All elemental resistance, all division resistance, I'm not totally sure what that's supposed to mean. All defense, healing power, and evasion rates are all halved and cannot be overridden. So Ophineus gets a boost, everyone else gets a massive debuff. It's a great effect to have, even if it is incredibly selfish. So moving on, the next up attack on the list is going to be a charge up, so just both of his scaling stats, P attack and M attack, plus 3,000. Which is good. He's got other ways to raise them too with his reactive. Then we have a draining attack. So not only is it a decent sized AoE, but he can also absorb the P attack and M attack from enemies. Good thing to use right before you charge up. Then we get to his map-wide attack. Now this is going to be good for shutting down especially reflection and absorption effects. It'll just remove those completely. It'll also remove buffs. So just if an enemy does one of those effects, you can just knock it out. Just be wary that you only get one cast of it. Then we get to one of his stronger single target attack, which will also do alchemic freeze. So if you really want to set yourself up for success, you could set this up, do a charge up, and then use his super nuke while they're frozen in the alchemic freeze state. And that attack has a massive range, just a kind of Gerald style AoE. And then as an added bonus, it will also do the alchemic overload. So let's go ahead and do the charge up. So in this case, we've got both the absorbed stat and the charge up to his stats. And then we're looking at 43. So it's not like crazy. We'll showcase it on a dark opponent because he has his gate 7. So that does matter quite a bit. And in that case, it's almost double. So it's closer to 100k, which would then also be overloaded. So that's pretty solid. His damage by itself is not really that crazy, at least without a lot of ramp up. But what's nice about him is that he has a lot of different ways to do damage, and because of how much he debuffs enemies, the chances of them being able to successfully kill him, if he's successfully set everything up, is going to be very, very low. So he should have no trouble taking them out. And that's without adding teammates that would be able to buff his damage via stat transfers, damage modifiers like missile up. So as a missile unit, I always expect them to do a little less damage than the ones who have to get up close, but they get to do it from far away, or in Ophineus' case, very, very far away. So yeah, I definitely like the kit quite a bit. But with this out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at just how I have him kitted out. Okay, so this is what my Ophineus looks like at present. He's not fully maxed out. I did get the 3 gates that I cared about first and foremost, which was going to be gates 2, gate 5, and gate 7. Gate 2 is overdrive. It basically adds range +2 to overdrive. So, and then his native passive skill is incredibly similar to that. So just big stat boost, big range boost. Pretty self-explanatory. There's not really anything else you would want to equip on him. Then his gate 5 increases his big like square magic AoE, the one that's like the reverse veil, and it adds 2 more charges to it and increases the range. So that one is really nice to have. And then gate 7, of course, is going to give him more stats that he's going to care about. However, gate 6 is also really important for a couple of reasons. You know, I don't have infinite access to shards, so something had to be last on my list of the ones to go for. And I decided that I would just make 6 the longer term goal out of those 4. And not that the other gates that I didn't mention, like 1 and 4 and 3, it's not like they don't matter, but I would not prioritize them to nearly the same extent. Like, I'd say definitely get gate 2 first if you can't get anything else, because that'll just help a lot. And then you might want to prioritize 6 or 7 over 5, depending on where you are move-wise. 6 is going to give him more HP, which he desperately needs. And then more important than that, the second memento slot, if you have the generic Northern Pride memento and you have it all the way to level 50, he would stand to benefit a lot from the extra HP and the extra agility that can provide, because he very, very badly, especially if you're going to try to use him in arena, as much agility as you can possibly get. We'll talk about why a little bit later. And then as far as gears go, I've given him the Ultima Scarf, his VCR, and then the Magnus cards. I don't have a lot of gears at present that boost missile modifier, so that is why I chose this one first and foremost. It gives slightly more HP than the Scarf does, but that's not really why I equipped it. The Scarf is there for the higher percentage of regen and the fact that it gives jump +1, which in his dragon form where he already has boosted jump just makes his accessibility a lot nicer. And then of course his VCR is a no-brainer. It covers agility for you, and then it's the attack stats that he wants. So pretty straightforward as far as that goes. As far as phantom memory things, I don't have a lot of the characters that I want, that I'm willing to give up, that aren't taken by other characters at the moment. So given that I have a ton of those coins, because I haven't rolled on that in a while, I'm basically going to be going for Inanji, Riza, Shahel, Isai Ignacio, everyone that he's got links with, and just try to get as many duplicates of those as I can. I'm not going to include that in the video though, because in the video it'll probably be like a million years long. Because yeah, it's been a while since I've rolled on that. If you're in a really big hurry to boost his stats though, I would just try to find a character with a very, very similar kit. Somebody like Nimble or somebody like Soul, and then just use those links of characters, and you should be able to get a pretty similar output. Basically, if you can raise HP, P attack, and M attack, that's all you really need. If you can get a set bonus that provides area of effect attack bonus, that's good too, but definitely not a huge deal. So yeah, that's about it for how I've got him set up. So next thing I want to do in closing out the video is I do want to talk about some of his downsides, and then talk about the big burning question of him versus Tyrfing Link version, because this is such a sensitive week in terms of being a perfect sweet spot between getting two very, very powerful units, and talk about who might want which unit and why. Okay, so first off, real quick, I did forget to talk about runes. So you want P attack and you want M attack. Whichever 4-piece you have, just counterbalance it with a really strong, like ideally max stat piece for the other stat. And then AoE modifier is a good choice for him. Most of his skills are AoE. And that's pretty simple. And then of course missile damage for the envy slot. That's all I've really got to say about runes. So on to Ophineus' flaws. So I'm not happy with his auto. I don't mean to say he's a bad character. On manual, he's really, really fun. I've been using him constantly since the day I got him. And I'm happy with him as a unit overall. But insofar as seeing how his auto behaves, it definitely, I don't think he's a good auto character. I guess having a charge up is often an indicator of that. Like for anything that's not a hell level, he'll probably be just fine. He won't auto it like intelligently, but he won't need to because he'll be able to just brute force it. But I think there's some limitations in his kit. The biggest one being the inconsistency of whether or not he uses his field effect. I've tried to solo maps with him and he just doesn't use it. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it very much doesn't. The first attempt I had for recording footage for what's currently playing right now for the Ophineus Hell map, I tried to just solo it with him, and like maybe you can do it if he's completely maxed out, but I've got gate 2, I've got gate 7, I've got a couple takes of gate 6. Gate 6 might be the breaking point, but it just doesn't seem like he does enough damage to be able to clear the map before his field effect wears off. Like, I get that when you can do damage from all the way on the other side of the map, you should do less damage, because like if he did as much damage as Lindrake without getting in as much danger as Lindrake can potentially get in, that would be bad balancing. But he just doesn't seem suitable to that kind of content. Like, he makes a really solid member of a team. Like, you might need some sustain options, like a cover unit to protect him, especially if you're not currently using his field, or even if you are, there's going to be some maps where things just hit that hard. And you might want some ways of boosting his damage. Melville works pretty well for just all stats, or if you've got a missile booster like Leafa or Yggdrasil. He works really well as part of a well-crafted team. He's definitely not like a solo carry like a Longhao or a Geas Link version. It's just that level of sustain just isn't there. And speaking of, the sustain is his biggest weakness in PvP. I've had many instances of him either getting one shot on the first turn, even with his shield from his VCR, or the crappy auto not using his field effect and then getting killed the next turn after. He doesn't have enough to really protect him early on. The shield can help, but not always, and he doesn't have any CC protection, so unless you have a really fast Veiler that is smart enough to run over to him and veil him, then that can be an issue too. Like, for example, Kanin Link version can just multi-turn stun him, and then that's basically a death sentence. It's not to say that he doesn't work at all in Arena. I've still managed to win a few times, and when he does what he's supposed to do, he does it pretty well. It's just not consistent. So as an Arena, and some of that's from not being completely maxed out and going against units that are completely maxed out. Once that playing field is leveled more, I imagine his performance will rise. but it's still a pretty glaring weakness. Now, manual PvP, on the other hand, I think he's going to be awesome in that, because you can be smart enough to use the moves that will correctly shut down the various aspects of the units that you're fighting. So in that regard, being a multifaceted toolkit is really good there, but it's one of those things where Otto is just kind of clumsy at using anything that's more complex. It's one reason I really like the Link version. He's just so simple, but he's just so perfectly simple. It's just like nothing can really go wrong. And on the plus side, Ophineus and Link work wonderfully together. One of my favorite teams right now is Link, Andex, Riza, and Ophineus. Sometimes trade out Riza for Claybell, depending on if Chrono stuff is necessary. But yeah, so I don't mean to say that he's a bad unit by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that he does have some noticeable flaws, and if you're hoping to run him like how you might run Long Hao, and just throw them at a hell map and have them go to town, then you're not going to get that kind of outcome. So as far as relating him to Tyrfing Link version, because for the rest of this reset, you can get either him or you get Tyrfing Link, while tagatame is still active for him, not active for Tyrfing Link, so she's going to be a little bit more expensive. But if you have the gems, or if you're re-rolling, I would say for most people, Tyrfing is probably the better choice, especially if sustain is one of your biggest issues, like you just feel like things are doing too much damage to you, you're having a hard time surviving, having a hard time getting the no deaths on map missions, then yeah, I think Tyrfing is going to be the unit for you. Now, if survivability is not an issue, and you're more in the phase of just trying to get the right combinations of certain elements and certain damage types, then Ophineus is the unit for you. I still think he's the best light missile unit in the game. Just the combination of the damage he's able to do relative to the distance that he's able to do it, combined with all of the debuffs in his kit, it's great. So if missile is what you need, and then doubly so if light missile is what you're looking for, then he'll make a wonderful unit. But yeah, that's about all I've got to say on Ophineus for the time being. I'm very much looking forward to getting his Gate 6. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.